Hey, what's happening, guys? This is Rob of Ro2R Review. Welcome back, and today we're going to do something a little bit different that we haven't done in a long time. Just for fun, I thought it was time to make another list. Now, what I wanted to do with today's list is discuss the 5 games from third-party developers that I most want to see come to the Nintendo Switch. Now, there's a couple of caveats here. We're obviously looking at stuff that's third-party. We're looking at stuff that is not then, of course, first-party. So we're not talking Sony IPs. We're not talking Microsoft IPs. These are games, third-party, that are announced, not yet out, scheduled to come out sometime in 2019, and are games that could feasibly come to the Nintendo Switch, but are right now not expected to. So again, I'm not talking about games that already exist, you know, old games like a Final Fantasy 15 or a Call of Duty Black Ops 4, stuff like that, Red Dead Redemption 2. We're talking about stuff, like I said, scheduled to release in the near future. I'm looking pretty much at 2019 games, and games that would make sense to come to the console. However, we're going to have to suspend disbelief to a degree, because one thing that I'm not really factoring into this kind of wish list that I'm making is whether or not the Switch could actually run some of these games, or how much effort would be put into the game to make it work. So we know that there are maybe some games that release on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC that are so very huge and so very graphically intensive that, as impressive as the Switch is, maybe the Switch wouldn't really be able to run these games without an insanely significant graphical downgrade. I am not going to factor that in here because, again, this is just a wish list. So I'm not worried about, you know, the graphics chipset in the Switch is this powerful and this game requires something this powerful. You guys know that that's not my bag. Anyway, this is just for fun. These are, in a world where anything could be possible, these are the 5 games that I most want to see come to the Switch. Now, before I jump into number 5, I do want to say one game that I'm not considering on this list is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And the main reason I wanted to bring it up is because that is like the most anticipated game for me personally, based solely on the concept. But that game, while it is technically scheduled for 2019 right now, I think we all know that that's not very likely to stick. And we also know nothing about that game. We know a title, and we know a couple of weird, awkward sentences that Vince Zampella said at E3. We haven't seen anything. We only know the time frame between episodes 3 and 4, and that it's like Jedi escaping Order 66, and that's it. So that game, to me, is vaporware until we actually see what it is. So that game is off the list, and with that said, let's jump into number 5. So coming in at number 5 is going to be Anthem, releasing early in 2019, just a couple of months from now, of course, from EA. And, you know, I know this game might be controversial for a lot of people because it's an online-only kind of thing. Obviously looks very much like a Destiny clone to a degree as far as, like, the gameplay and the progression, the ever-present online world sort of thing. And we also know there is probably going to be a huge issue, potentially, not even potentially, for sure, with microtransactions and stuff like that. And yeah, those are fair complaints. However, for me, the aesthetic and the gameplay look so fun to me that I'm kind of really still excited for this game, you guys. Like, until I get a chance to play it and be disappointed with it, I'm excited because it looks really fun. And I'm a huge fan of Destiny. I have no problem saying that. Yes, there are issues with Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 here and there, absolutely. But as far as just the core concept, the core gameplay, what it's like to play that game with my friends, I love it. I've had a blast with both games, and I look forward to seeing how EA can try to sort of borrow from that model and do something kind of different with Anthem. The whole mech suit thing and the ability to fly and go underwater and fight big, huge monsters and mechs and stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm a simple guy. I like robots and explosions. I like playing games with my buddies. And so for me, Anthem looks really fantastic. Obviously, this would probably be one of the #1 games you think would not be possible on the Switch hardware. I totally get that, but again, that's not the point of this list. If I could make Anthem run on the Switch, and EA wanted to be smart and make the money from porting the game to the Switch, it's definitely one of the games I'd love to see on the console. Now, coming in at number 4 is going to be Rage 2 from Bethesda. I know this game might not actually stick to 2019, but I don't really care because right now it is technically supposed to come out in 2019. They showed it off at E3 just this past year, and oh my goodness, it looks great. And it's funny because when the first Rage came out, probably like 2008 or so, I don't remember, but like around a decade ago, the game did not make a big splash. And they were coming off of Doom 3 at the time, I believe, that team that's kind of responsible for Rage. And Doom 3 is a good game that people liked, and they wanted to promote Rage as like the next step. And I remember that it came out and, you know, it kind of landed with a thud. I know it wasn't bad, but it just didn't make an impact. No one really cared about it, and it was forgotten almost as soon as it released. But in this new age, in this current generation, and the way Bethesda's just, okay, mostly kicking ass, we got to put Fallout 76 aside. Let's look at Bethesda over the last 10 years, up until Fallout 76 released. Bethesda has become kind of the people's champion in a lot of ways as far as gamers see them. And so what they seem to be doing with Rage 2 looks great. Doom 2016 was so successful. Rage 2 looks like another crazy, insane, fast-paced, off-the-wall, totally nutty, very sort of, I don't know, charisma-driven kind of shooter. I just think it looks great. And so again, the Switch probably couldn't run it. Maybe it could, maybe it couldn't. I don't really care. I think it looks fantastic. I love first-person shooters. Rage 2 looks like one of the best, and I would love to play it on my Switch. Coming in at number 3 is a game I am so very excited for. That is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, or Sekiro. I don't know how you pronounce it, so forgive me. This game looks amazing. This is the From Software team responsible for Dark Souls and Bloodborne, and if you know me, you know that I love those games, and I love that team from FromSoft. They are incredible. What they do with those games has just totally taken me over the last 5 or 10 years or so. And to see them finally stepping away from that sort of darker neo-Victorian medieval sort of setting into like a feudal Japan samurai sort of weird magic demon setting is crazy exciting, man. I mean, it looks phenomenal. And when I watch the gameplay from this game, I can see everything that makes Dark Souls and Bloodborne great, but I see it in a different setting with a different sort of mechanic and flow behind it. And I can also see so many new elements to the gameplay and to the flow and pace of combat, and so many more acrobatics and stuff thrown into it. It's very exciting, and you got the stealth kills, you got the chain sort of thing, and he's whipping and jumping around while he's attacking. That is incredibly different from the Dark Souls formula, but again, I can see sort of the skeleton and the sort of foundation of that amazing gameplay in Sekiro. Again, I don't know how to say it. And so I just think overall, they're going to nail it. It looks beautiful. It looks fun. It's from the team that makes one of my favorite non-Nintendo franchises around. And I also think that they could probably make this game work on the Switch. I don't anticipate it coming, but I think that if they did spend the time and money, it probably could run fairly well. So what can I say, man? It's my number 3 game I want to see come to the Switch. Now, coming in at number 2 is a game that's exciting, not only because it just looks absolutely amazing, but because of every game on this list, I think it has the best chance at actually really coming to the Nintendo Switch. And that is going to be Code Vein. Now, what's interesting about Code Vein is since it was announced last year, it's kind of gone silent. I think they gave one other update several months after they first kind of revealed the game, and then it's really just disappeared. And we haven't heard anything about it other than it's supposed to come out sometime in 2019. I anticipate it probably in the first half of the year. I don't think it's going to take too long to finally get this game out. And, you know, similar to Sekiro, it's definitely borrowing from the Dark Souls formula and the Dark Souls model. And I know that we're at a point in gaming nowadays where some people maybe feel like to describe a game as Dark Souls-like is getting sort of tired and overplayed and maybe not as accurate as some people want to use it. And I think that in a lot of ways that is true, but trust me, as a Dark Souls and Bloodborne, you know, expert, I guess I can say expert, I've played all the games to death and I love them. So as somebody very familiar with that formula, I can look at what I've seen from Code Vein and tell you that yes, it seems like it's trying to do what those games do, what FromSoft did with the Dark Souls stuff. And this one is very much using like a Japanese anime style mixed with like a steampunk sort of vampire-infused, weird, medieval kind of combination thing. I love the aesthetic. I love what I've seen from the gameplay. It's just the kind of game and setting that really appeals to me. I think it looks fantastically made. I hope it's as good as it looks. And there's been rumors about this game coming to the Switch pretty much since it was first showed off. And I have to feel like it has a pretty good shot at coming. It could definitely run on the console. There's no doubt about that. So we know the tech could support it, and I think it would be a huge success on the console. So I would be shocked if they didn't end up announcing this game for the Switch. The question would be if it was day and date or a delayed port to the Switch, and I hope it would be day and date. Either way, it's one of my most anticipated games, period, and it's definitely a game I need to see come to the Switch. And finally, coming in at number 1, a game you probably won't be surprised to hear me say, that is Resident Evil 2, the remake. Oh my goodness, my most anticipated non-Metroid Prime 4 game that exists right now. And the game is very close, you guys. It's mid-January. We are like 2 months away from the release of this game, and it's going to be amazing. Resident Evil 2 is my favorite Resident Evil up until the remake came out in 2002 for the GameCube, and also not including Resident Evil 4. So, long story short, it's my 3rd favorite ever, but if you remove the remake of the first game, it's my 2nd favorite. And it's definitely, I think, the scariest Resident Evil game ever made. I know some people talk about 3 and Code Veronica, and those are great, and they are scary, but I think Resident Evil 2 was the scariest as far as the atmosphere. Resident Evil 1 had the dogs jumping through the window jump scare, but as far as setting an atmosphere and tone that just made you terrified to turn every corner, just for me, it was Resident Evil 2. The first introduction of Leon, everything they're doing with this remake is just out of this world, man. I mean, I was so excited when I heard they were doing it, and I was expecting a Resident Evil 2 remake that echoed the remake of the original game on the GameCube, because I loved what they did there, and I love tank control, static camera angle Resident Evil. To me, that's like the greatest. But seeing that they also then decided to remake the entire game, redo everything that makes up what the game is, and make it look like Resident Evil 4 instead, to me, almost makes it like a new game. You know, I mean, we're going to start in the Raccoon City Police Department, and we're obviously going to get introduced to the liquor and experience some of those great moments in that game. But I think in a lot of ways, it's going to feel like it's a brand new entry in Resident Evil, just like Metroid Samus Returns, while a remake of Metroid 2 also kind of felt like a brand new game. And to do it for Resident Evil is just mind-blowing. And so, anyway, now I'm just talking about the game. I also think it belongs on the Switch. Resident Evil has had a great history with Nintendo in the past. The remake, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Revelations on the 3DS, and now it's all blown up into a bigger thing that all consoles are experiencing again. And I think that Resident Evil 2, you know, they brought Revelations 1 and 2 back over to the Switch last year, very successful ports. Why wouldn't they want to make Resident Evil 2 also work on the Switch? Clearly, the technology definitely is a barrier here, just like with Anthem and with Rage 2. But I still just want to see it happen, you guys. I mean, I think that Capcom would like to make this game work on the Switch. You know, they were able to do the cloud version of Resident Evil 7 and make that work, and there were talks about Capcom really wanting to convince Nintendo to put more power into the Switch because they wanted to make Resident Evil games work on it. So they've already started kind of scratching the surface with Resident Evil 7, also graphically impressive. Why not take the next step with Resident Evil 2? To me, it would make sense. Impossible? Maybe. Could it happen? Possibly. Will it happen? Doubtful. Either way, it doesn't stop it from being number 1 on my list, man. This is the game of all games, other than Star Wars, that I would like to see come on the Switch. It belongs on the Switch, it would sell well on the Switch, it would be great in portable mode, so we can just dream that one day, maybe it'll happen. So that's my short list of the 5 third-party games that I most would like to see on the Nintendo Switch, because I think they would be great in portable, I think that they would be great for the console's library, and I think it would also be great for the individual titles, because I think they would also be very successful on the Nintendo Switch and to the Switch audience. Now, a couple of quick honorable mentions that I wanted to throw out there that almost made it into the list: Devil May Cry 5, Cyberpunk 2077, Metro Exodus, and Jump Force. These were some of the initial games that, kind of perusing some of the 2019 releases, I definitely would also like to see come to the Switch. And I don't really think that any of those other than Jump Force would have a shot, but they sure would be great in portable on the Switch. I think that they would be great for the library as well. So they almost made the cut, but ultimately I feel good about the 5 that I named. This was a lot of fun to do. I've been thinking about this for a while. 2019 could be a banner year for third-party games on the Switch. We're already having a huge game in Doom Eternal come to the Switch. That could continue to keep the floodgates open to show the industry what's possible on the console. So hey, maybe some of these graphically impressive games could be made to work on the Switch if the right team and the right budget was behind making the ports happen. So Either way, you've heard my list of 5 games. I want to hear you guys discuss the 5 games that I talked about today, as well as the games that you would like to see come to the Switch. Of all the third-party games coming, all the developers out there making good stuff, what do you think would be great to see come to the Switch that right now is not announced with a Switch port? I think that there's probably a lot to pick from, and I'm sure you guys will have some really great answers. So, with that being said, that's it from me today. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.